So you go to a job interview and they ask standard questions of you, right? Tell me about yourself. Why should we hire you? Why do you want to work here? What are your salary expectations? Do you see yourself in 5 years? All these very cliched and annoying questions that everybody always asks. And, you give a super artificial, rehearsed, vetted, censored answer that you've been preparing and rehearsing, right, for all these. But they also have certain other standard interview questions that people don't talk about as much. One of them is this question: how do you handle stress? And I feel that we need to talk about this question because it's another one of those trick questions that's like flying under the radar that a lot of people don't realize is a trick question. They're trying to get the dirt on you, which is a consistent theme of job interviews. And if you've noticed, when they ask you about stress is a negative thing, right? And they're asking you about a negative thing. So it's very similar to the question, what is your weakness? They're asking you about something bad about yourself. So obviously how you respond to this and how you handle it is very delicate, okay? You can't give an uncensored answer. You can't say like, look, stress is hard on everyone. If you're immune to stress, you are beyond a psychopath. Even psychopaths feel stressed. You know what I'm saying? When the pressure's on, and when they fear the future. So, look, stress affects all humans. I'm a human. It affects me. I don't like it. And, you can't just sort of talk about, this no holds barred, because you're in the process of making a first impression. And when you make a first impression, if you start saying a bunch of bad things about yourself, that becomes who you are to the other person. That's the problem, right? So this is a trap, this question. How do you handle stress? So the way you should answer it, in my opinion, and this is an original to me. I got this from, these are one of the questions I got from like a really high-end executive recruiter like 10 years ago. They were coaching me on getting executive jobs and stuff. And like, this is what they said. And it worked really well for me. So that's why I recommend it to others, is you just say like, if they say, how do you handle stress? You say, I handle it very well. And then you stop talking. You see what I did there? I said, I handle it very well. And then I shut up. Like I made a statement and that statement is a closed statement. There's no more details. No more details necessary. It doesn't run on. Unlike a lot of what I say. And then you stop. Just like this, right? And you let them fill the gap in the conversation, right? There's a lot of social pressure in job interviews, and a lot of recruiters will take full advantage of this. If they want you to talk about something and give more information, they will leave a gap in the conversation. And a gap in a conversation with someone that, you're just meeting for the first time, it can feel awkward, and you can feel under a lot of pressure to keep talking to fill that gap so it doesn't seem as awkward, right? And they're doing this intentionally. So if you don't want to talk about this topic, and this goes as a blanket principle for like anything they may ask you in a job interview, if they ask you something you don't really want to go into detail about, just say your piece and then stop and let them say the next thing. Usually that turns into them just moving on to the next question they had planned. So you get off this topic, which is what you want to do. Because the thing is, if you keep talking about, all the times you've been stressed and, all the various things you do to manage stress and things like this, you're talking about negative aspects of yourself. They're going to picture you as someone who gets stressed often. If they just met you and you're talking about all the times you were stressed and all the things you had to do to manage stress, that's who you're going to be to them. And that's a bad thing. They're going to think, I don't want to hire this person because they tend to get stressed out. That's the impression I'm left with. Right? So you say, I handle it very well. And then you stop talking. Okay? Now, Okay, now some other answers I've heard are saying things like, I do various things to manage stress, right? The problem is now you're lengthening the question. You're taking up valuable speaking time in the interview, talking about negative things. This is what I've done in the past. I've done this, and I've had to do this, and I've done this. And, now you're conveying that, you're a person that gets stressed a lot. That's the impression you're making, right? Now, the other point I want to make with this question is they can ask you another question that sounds very similar to this, but it's a completely different question. And that is, tell me about a time that you've had to handle stress. Okay, that's a different question. So that's a behavioral question. And you answer that question the way you would handle any behavioral question. You tell a success story from your past, and you adapt it to the exact question that they asked you. So in this case, you talk about an accomplishment. You'd answer it in the STAR method, STAR, situation, task, action, result. So I was working in this role. I was given this task. This is what I did. This is how it turned out. It was a bit stressful, but we succeeded. We solved the problem. We achieved the goal. I got commended for doing a great job, and, it resulted in my promotion. The end. That's how I handled stress. I sort of powered through it, got the job done. And what you need to know about me is that I had this accomplishment, and I got promoted for it, and I was commended for it. That's the impression that you're leaving them with, not the fact that you're just a person that's stressed out. See the difference? The other point I want to make about this question, a mistake that I feel a lot of people make, is they ask you, how do you handle stress? And you say basically a thing of how you don't encounter stress. You say, well, I tend to be very organized, so I found that if I'm organized, then I don't get stressed out ever. And the problem is you're deliberately circumlocuting their question. You're not answering their question. They're not asking you about how you've avoided stress in the past. They're asking you, once it's upon you, how do you handle it? Because, for example, maybe I'm hiring for a role as air traffic controller, which is known to be a very stressful job. Maybe you're going to be working in a job that is very stressful. Okay, customer service. You've got to occasionally deal with angry, unreasonable people, right? It can be very stressful at times. So don't answer me by saying, "Oh, I avoid stress. I never encounter a situation where there's stress." That's not an answer. What I'm telling you is you're going to encounter stress in this job. What I want to know is, how do you handle it? So don't say something about how you avoid stress even occurring. I found that by being organized, I found that checking my schedule every morning and planning for things, making a solid plan, I can avoid stress. That's not a good answer, in my opinion. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. That's this nebulous kind of topic around the question, how do you handle stress?